Hello, everyone, and welcome to another day of live streaming with me. Today's is really special because we're gonna do TanStack Start. This is the first episode of learning TanStack Start. If you didn't know, TanStack Start is now in beta stage, which means this is the perfect time to learn about it. So, hello, everybody in the chat. Thank you so much for joining me. How are you all doing this morning? And wherever you're joining me, what time is it where you are? And guess who decided to make an entry? Pepper.
Hai, ये कहाँ मुँह मार के आई?
Hello to everybody in the chat. Akash, Azimuddin, Hunar, Ja, how are you all? K. Subramanyeshwara, what will you cover in this? We're going to do TanStack Start. We're going to build a project with TanStack Start, and I am writing the documentation on building that tutorial, and it's going to be on TanStack Start's documentation. So you're going to come along the journey with me, and we're going to do this together. Yeah! How are you all? Airwall Production, hi! Amar, will it be TanStack query lessons? TanStack Start, but we're gonna cover query as well. Atharv, how's it going? Azimuddin, loved the video, watched just a bit of intro, but the quality and editing are top notch. Full-time content creation is already paying off. Thank you, Azimuddin. Tanishk, welcome. Jack, how are you? So good to see you. I am so excited that you're here. I'm so excited for this series too. Hey Arjun, welcome. You guys, mod is in chat, so gotta be decent. Pratik, how is it going? So good to see you. Sea shanty music, right? It's like pirate theme. I don't know how it happened to be that, but it is, and we're loving it. So, if you are new here, welcome. If this is your first stream, please say hello in the chat and tell me that you're a first timer. We love all our first timer people, and we love our seasoned people even more. This is a Build with Me series where I pick one technology and build an app and walk through the process of building that app, sharing how my experience went, and helping you learn alongside with me. And with that, my dog wants to go out again. 1 second. We need a pepper cam. Okay, let's get some lo-fi music in here. Pepper should host a session. People have been requesting a pepper cam, and I think when she comes in my office, I'm gonna set up a camera here so you can actually see her sleeping and snoring. Okay, let's try some other music. What project are we building? We're going to build a jokes app. Okay, so let me introduce what we're going to do. This is day 1 of the TanStack series, TanStack Start series. So we're going to build an example app, which is going to be hosted on the TanStack Starts documentation. I've already built the example app, but we're going to do this together. We're going to write the documentation together. I'm going to walk you through the process of how to build a TanStack Start app, or how to build an app with TanStack Start. What is TanStack Start? Why would you need this? Actually, by a show of hands, how many of you have used TanStack Start or know what TanStack Start is? So I'm going to put that question here. How many of you have used TanStack Start. Jokes app, that's so on brand. I know, right? And guess what kind of jokes is it? It's dev jokes. We're gonna have so much fun in this series. I'm so excited. I finally get to say all of my dev jokes without people being like, oh my god, what a poor joke. Just watched your Arjun, how about the first talk from Pepper on Discord? She's gonna be like, let me tell you how to be a spoiled pupper. No, she's not spoiled. She's very sweet. Just watch your AI agent video, learned a lot. Oh, sweet. Thank you, Madhav. For anybody who doesn't know what we're talking about, a new video came out. Well, I released a new video. A new video came out. I released a new video on building an AI agent, and we built a real estate AI agent. Just like this stream, that video was also built on the stream. Well, we built the app on the stream, and I put all of that together to help you understand what is an AI agent, how to build an AI agent with LangGraph, Convex, OpenAI, React using Shadcn and components. So give that a watch if you haven't watched that. I'm going to actually share the link as well. And let me know what you think, if it makes sense. Also, one of the questions I have in the comments is, when you think of AI agents, what do you think? So let me know what you think of AI agents. When I think of AI agents, Will Smith comes to my mind from that movie, Men in Black. That's the agent. That's the only agent I can remember. TanStack, is it renamed from React Router? TanStack Query is renamed from React Router. React Router is the previous name of TanStack Query. Yes. I have set the bar for a very bad joke. Let's see who can break it. Where is the joke? I'll start with this bad joke. We'll learn TanStack Stack from the very start. I love it. Jack, I'm good. Happy to be here. Always happy to see Shruti and Pepper. Ah, Jack, I am happy to see you. Okay. Shall we get started? React Query, React Router is a totally different thing. Oh, you mean React Router? Yes. React Router is Remix Router. React Router. This is React Router. Why does it look so different? React Router is this, and then React TanStack Router, which is TanStack Router is this. Okay, let's get started. Today we're going to start off with the basic introduction of TanStack Start. TanStack Query is renamed from React Query, not React Router. You're right. I messed up the words there. TanStack Query is renamed from React Query, not React Router. So let's get the screen going. Okay, this is TanStack Router. We're going to start off with TanStack Start, which is actually in beta stage right now. So, first question, did anybody answer? Have you worked with TanStack Start? Okay, let's use that as a poll. TanStack Start. Okay, there you go. Have you used TanStack Start? And yes, no, or what is TanStack Start? Are you using Chrome in background because the stream is buffering for me? Let's see. I don't see an issue with the stream. Let me quit something else so it's not buffering for you. and I am using Chrome. All right, let's see. Yes is 33%, no is 50%, and what is TanStack start is 14%. Perfect. I heard about TanStack query or React query used for API fetching or caching. Correct. Your webcam is lagging, I guess, or the whole video, not sure. All right. Thank you for letting me know, Parth. Okay, that should fix it. Let's zoom this in. All right, what do people think? Have you used TanStack Start? 29% people say yes, awesome. 57% people have not used TanStack Start, and 14% people say, what is TanStack Start? Cool. Okay, so let's talk about TanStack Start. TanStack Start is currently in beta stage, but it is a full stack React framework. I think most people, when they think of frameworks, they think of Next.js. So TanStack Start is an alternative to Next.js. So some of the things that TanStack Start comes with is SSR, streaming, server functions, API routes, bundling, and more, powered by TanStack Router and Beat. I think what's really cool is that if you look in the examples, one, it is super easy to get started with, but also it gives you a lot of the things out of the box itself, which makes it super powerful. Now let me put the music down so we can get focused here. How about that? Whole video is lagging. Is it still lagging? Okay, I know what to do. No, it's not. Perfect. Awesome. Cool. So I have built a project already, which is TanStack example jokes. And we're going to go through this today. Start example project. Okay, my message went late, lag fixed. Awesome, cool. Okay, so what is TanStack Start? It is a framework for building full stack React applications that comes with server-side rendering, file system-based routing, type-side server functions, and built-in development server. A lot of words, but what does that mean? Let's clone this and figure this out and go through the code ourselves. Also, when you have questions, put them in the chat because your questions will help me create this tutorial even better. Gonna get this set up. Meanwhile, let's see. 12% people say, what is TanStack Start? Cool. Okay, I'm gonna run this. npm run dev. If I remember how to run this. Alrighty, I'm going to use Arc because sometimes Chrome slows a lot. Chrome is super slow sometimes. Alrighty, localhost 3000. Perfect. Get this up and running. Nice. Okay, let's do a quick demo of what we're building. So, heads up, I built this project like a month ago, so if it breaks, not my fault. So here's what we're going to build. We're going to build a way for one reading from a file. We're going to create a list of JSON. We're going to create a list of jokes in a JSON. So we've got jokes in here. Let me move this away. We've got jokes in here. We've got an ID, a question, and an answer. And we've got like a bunch of jokes in here. So what we want to do is, one, we want to be able to read from this JSON, put that on the page, and render that on the page. So we're going to understand how we can read from a file. And then secondly, how can we write to a file? So that's the basic thing we're going to learn. And Pepper has made an entrance. So that's the basic thing we're going to learn. How to read from a file and how to write from a file. Is it the same which you used to show roving tab index? Yes. Oh, you remember that. Oh, G alert. Yeah, this is the same thing. So I don't know if I have this. Oh yeah, there you go. So I'll do a quick demo of that as well in a second. But we're going to use TanStack to understand how to write to a file and how to read from a file. And while doing that, we're going to understand some of the features of TanStack, which is server functions. We're also going to understand how things move in TanStack. So today, we're just going to understand the basic wiring of TanStack start and how things work, how to organize your file, what is the whole structure like. That's what we're going to do today. All right, let's get settled. I'm going to sit down. Okay, is it the same which used to show roving tab index? Let's take a look at it. So, what is roving tab index for those of you who don't know? This is an accessible app. So, which means that when we are navigating this app, and I'm going to use tab key to navigate through this app, I hit tab key, I'm on the first item. I hit tab, I'm on the second item, and then I hit tab, I'm on the list now. And now if I hit tab again, I'm at the bottom of this page. I'm on the subscription area. So what it skipped was all of these items in the list. And why it did that is because if somebody is navigating through the list, if they're navigating through the list, they would like to use the arrow keys, which is the typical behavior of somebody navigating a list. If they're not navigating the list, they would want to move out of the list. By developing a roving tab index, we provide people a way to navigate the page without getting them stuck in a long list or a long page or a long tabbable interactive elements. So because lists are all interactive elements, we don't want to keep people stuck in this. And why that's important is, let's say that somebody is navigating through the site and they're like, okay, I have all this. They quickly want to navigate through this page and they're like, okay, I have this input field and now got a list. I want to move away from the list into the next interactive element. We can develop something that's called a roving tab index through which they can move to the next item. How that's built, I think that's going to be topic for another video or another live stream, but I'll quickly talk about it. Basically, what you want to do is that when you have the list focused, you want to give the first item the first tab index of 0 to the first item you want to focus. And then once that's focused, when somebody hits tab, you want to move the tab index away to the next element. Next element in the interactive, not in the list, but outside of the list. So now the tab index is 0 for this. If somebody moves with their arrow keys, I move the tab index of the next item to 1 or to 0, which means the next item in the list becomes navigable, but the previous item gets a tab index of 0. And then if I hit tab again, tab index moves outside. We understand that somebody has hit tab and they want to move outside. So if it's a arrow key, only then we navigate between items. If it's a tab, we move to the next item. That is called roving tab index. It is a little bit complicated to explain in the stream, so I'll make a separate video on that if that is interesting to you. Just let me know in the chat if you want me to. Is it just giving Next.js features in Vite? I guess you could say that it is giving a lot of features that Next.js does give along with Vite. But I like to think of it as a more lightweight framework as opposed to Next.js, and very unopinionated. Let's open TanStack start. Okay, so let's go into the examples. Kizzy, welcome. I am a new joinee. My name is Ishrat Madan from India. Good to see that you're awake. It's more focused on client side than Next. That is true. It's more client side first than Next, which is more server focused. You're right, Jacob. Okay, so that is the project we're going to build. And then what we want to also show is, okay, I hate this browser. Okay, what also happens is that if you add a new joke, like, I don't know, tell me a joke. I'm gonna Google a joke. Oh wait. And so let's see. So we've got this like list of JSON that we're pulling from to render list on the page. Now, if I have a joke like, what is the developer's favorite bar? What is the developer's favorite bar? Foo bar. And if I add this joke, it's going to render that and add it at the bottom of this page, which is what is the developer's favorite bar? Foo bar. Cool. No refresh needed. Automatically synced it. And that's what we're going to build today. So we've got this jokes all the way at the bottom. It's going to add an ID and add the joke with the answer. So we're writing to the same file. All right, let's start with how this is structured. Starting to look for all Arc alternatives. I know, I think I like that Arc is, it's very kind of like focused reading mode type of browser, which is nice if you are reading a documentation. But navigating through Arc is such a pain. I don't know if other people feel the same way or if I'm just new to it. Brave is my go-to choice. It just works simply. I haven't tried Brave actually. Oh well, I guess I've tried it briefly long time ago. Yeah, I haven't tried Brave. I don't know if you like it. Anjali, I'm also here. Hi, Anjali. TanStack Start plus Solid.js. That would be amazing to see you use. Yes. Actually, I think in the documentation, they do talk about TanStack Start as TanStack Start with Solid. Or did I just make that up? Maybe in getting started. I don't know. Maybe I just made that up. Okay. Anyways, let's get started. So I think it's helpful to kind of talk about the document, like go through the documentation and talk about like why. I think there's a lot of questions on like what is TanStack Start and why. So let's go over the overview and talk about what is TanStack Start. Um, Am I the only one who uses Firefox? I haven't used Firefox in a while. Since solid signals are very interesting, it seems in the new 2.0 are even more. Yeah. Brave's full of crypto garbage. And Arc is now in maintenance mode, apparently. Really? Is this better than Mern? Is this better than Mern? I don't know if it's a apples to apples comparison, to be honest. What is my hero doing here? Hello, Jack. Hello, Jack. Everybody's hero. Oh, it's changed framework from React to Solid. There you go. I knew I wasn't making that up. All right. Okay. So let's go through this documentation and try to understand what is that we get from TanStack. TanStack Start. What you'll get with TanStack Router. Okay. So this is something. So TanStack Start. Oh, I love this section. It says router or start. It says router is a powerful, type-safe, and full-feature routing system for React application. It is designed to handle the beefiest of full-stack routing requirements. TanStack Start builds on top of router's type system to provide type-safe full-stack APIs that keep you in the fast lane. So what you get with TanStack Router, we've used TanStack Router before on these streams as well and had a pretty good experience. So what you get with TanStack Router is TypeScript support, type-safe navigation, nested routing and pathless route layout routes, built-in route loaders with SWR caching, designed for client-side data caches, automatic route prefetching. That's all TanStack Router. But what you get with TanStack Start is full document SSR, streaming, server functions, bundling, deployment. I think these two things, or three things actually, is why people go to Next.js. But it's cool that you get it out of TanStack Start. Okay, so in summary, use TanStack Router for client-side routing and TanStack Start for full-stack routing. I love the summary. So how does it work? TanStack Start uses Nitro and Vite to bundle and deploy your application. In fact, these are the same tools that power Solid Start. With these tools, you can do a few things you couldn't do before. Provide a unified API for SSR, streaming, and hydration. Extract server-only code from your client-side code. Bundle your application for deploying to any hosting provider. Basically, the idea is that you can use, I think it's kind of hard to understand what it means, but basically the idea is that you can have a server-side code and you can have a client-side code within your component, and they easily talk to each other through server functions. And I think they recently came out with API routes as well, right here. This was probably released like 3 days ago. So, okay, when should I use it? Where is it? TanStack Start is perfect for you if you want to build a full-stack React application with full document SSR and hydration, streaming, server functions, rich client-side interactivity. And when might not you use it? When your site is 100% static. I think that makes sense. It gives you a lot of like server functions. So, and server side capability. So if your site is 100% static, you're probably doing too much with TanStack Start. Your goal is a server rendered site with zero JS or minimal client side interactivity. And the reason being that TanStack Start is client side focused, and you're looking for a React server component first framework. We'll support RSC soon in our own awesome flavor. So that is a 101 of like what is TanStack Start. I'll see if there's any questions. Okay, majority of the people who voted have said that they have either not used TanStack Start or what is TanStack Start. So great. I think this is going to be a great 101 for those folks. All right, let's get started. Now, I already have a project in here, but I kind of want to show you from the beginning of how to build this project. There is a quick start guide, and I actually like this basic guide quite a lot. But it starts, there's one with basic, there's one with React query as well, which is pretty nice. So let's go through the basic thing. Let's understand how to set it up. Okay, that is a lot of code. Let's go here. No, that's the one. Learn the basics. Let's go here. All right. I think this is a really good documentation. So we're gonna spend some time going through this. Oh, can you please increase font size? Yes, absolutely. Oh, video quality 2K. I'm going to make sure that Chrome is quit before I switch to 2K. Okay, it should be on 2K now. Okay, Suhail. I'm thinking that this is kind of React Angular question, same as Next.js, just a preferable thing. What is the question? Okay, so let's talk about this this kind of like how to set up TanStack Start documentation. So it says we've got TanStack Router, we've got Nitro, and then we got Vinci. You don't have to worry about Vinci for now because it's going to be removed, which I'm honestly really looking forward to. So it all starts with the router. This is the file that will dictate the behavior of TanStack Router within Start. Here you can configure everything from default preloading to caching staleness. I think if you use the router, this will make a lot of sense. It is the same thing. I'm going to move this back in here. Okay, so we've got app.router.tsx. I'm going to show you a router file in here. Cool. So the first thing we do is set up our router file. We've got create TanStack router, and it's pretty straightforward. Notice the scroll restoration property. This is used to restore the scroll position of the page when navigating between routes. Okay, route generation. This is the route tree file is generated when you run TanStack Start via npm run dev. This file contains a generated route tree and a handful of TS utilities that make TanStack Start fully type safe. Again, something that TanStack Router gives us. So route tree.gen is generated, which we have right here. So basically the idea is anytime you add a route in router, you're going to get a updated route tree file. We only have one route so far because we only have one page, which is the home page. Okay, then the server entry point. Although TanStack Start is designed with client-first APIs, it is by and large a full-stack framework. This means that all use cases, including both dynamic and static, rely on a server or built-in entity to render our application's initial HTML payload. This is done via the app/ssr.tsx file. So, okay, so we've got the client-side routing set up, and then we just got to do the server-side routing through a file called ssr.tsx, which goes in the home folder as well. And then it says you just gotta add a router manifest, and what else? Create start handler, default stream handler, and that's it. So what is happening here is whether we are statically generating our app or serving it dynamically, the ssr.tsx file is the entry point for doing all SSR related work. It is important that a new router is created for each request. This ensures that any data handled by the router is unique to the request. The get router manifest function is used to generate the router manifest, which is used to determine many aspects of asset management and preloading for our application. And the default stream handler function is used to render our application to a stream, allowing us to take advantage of streaming HTML to the client. And that is how we got server streaming. So it looks super straightforward. All we gotta do is have this React start server and import create start handler and default stream handler. Then we need a router manifest. It says that a new router is created for each request. This ensures that any data handled by the router is unique to the request. So then the client entry point, getting our HTML to the client is only half the battle. Once we need to hydrate our client-side JavaScript once the route resolved for the client. We do this by hydrating the root of our application with the start client component. So what's going on here? We've got a client file. So we've only set up the router so far, the client side, and then we set up this is like server router. We've set up the server side things through ssr.tsx, which is the server side router, and then we need to do our client side stuff. So in the client side, we call our router, and then we're just hydrating the root. Okay, so what did we do so far? We've got the router, that is the one that's creating like HTML, and that's the one that's generating where the components are going to come from. Then we've got the server-side router, which is basically just creating a similar thing but on the server side. And then we've got a client side, which is where we are calling a router. And so it says that getting our HTML to the client is only half the battle. Once there, we need to hydrate our client-side JavaScript once the root resolves for the client. And that's what we're doing here. Hydrate root on the document with the router. This enables us to kick off client-side routing once the user's initial server request has fulfilled. Okay, other than the client entry point, the root route of your application is the entry point of your application. The code in this file will wrap all of the routes in this app, including your homepage. It behaves like a pathless layout route for your whole application because it is always rendered. This is a perfect place to construct your application shell and take care of any global logics. So it's kind of like the layout component. And then this is in, where do I have? root.tsx. You're using TypeScript. Yes. All right, pretty straightforward here. Nothing much happening here. It's just it's kind of like the default page that renders. So we've got our kind of like the layout that we're doing, head content, and the outlet. This is kind of the layout file. This layout may change in the future as we roll out SPA mode, which allows the root route to render the SPA shell without any paid specific content. Notice the scripts component. This is used to load all of the client-side JavaScript for the application, which is right here in the body tag. Let's see if there's any questions so far. What is TanStack start? 39% people are asking, what is TanStack start? All right, so we've got the basic structure set up. Now there's a little bit of documentation on what are routes. If you're not familiar with routes are an extensive feature of TanStack Router. Covered in the routing guide as a summary, routes are defined using create file route. Routes are automatically code split and lazy loaded. Critical data fetching is coordinated from routes loader and other stuff. So we're not going to go into this because we're only going to have a single page app so far. And we have our index file here, which is where we're adding all of our stuff. We're going to get into this in a bit. Get Tanner on one of our live streams. Yeah, so Tanner was actually on the Fireside Chats where we talked about his journey of starting TanStack Start and actually how he started TanStack, like how he started into web dev. I think that was a really inspirational chat, but I do want to have him over for a chat on, there it is.
Libraries for
Sure. But I do want to have him over for a chat about just TanStack as well. Tanner. So you should definitely check that out. Okay. Now. Okay, now we have to navigate back. I hate navigating in here. Happy to see you, ma'am or sis. Happy to see you too, Varun. Thank you for joining us. All right. So let's keep going. So far what we've did is we've done the router, the SSR, the router, and the client.tsx. Those are the 3 files we need to set up TanStack Start. That's it. Tanner! Hi! You guys, everyone say hi to Tanner. I'm here for 8 minutes. Okay, let's see if we have any questions for Tanner. Would give Tanner a shout out. Where are you from, USA or UK? I am in the USA. Party in the USA. All right, cool. Let's keep going. So far what we did was we did the SSR file, we did the router file, and then we did the client file. That's all we need to set up TanStack Start. Then the next bit here is it talks about setting up our navigation. Tanner in the chat. If you have questions for Tanner, put them in the chat. Tanner, we're going to try to get you on one of our streams as well. Mr. Tanner, if I want to ship a news website, should I be using TanStack at the state it is in? Do you mean TanStack Start or any of the, or which part of TanStack? Oh, the whole strategy generation stuff. I think you mean TanStack Start. So Tanner, question for you. If I want to ship a news website, should I be using TanStack start at the state it is in? You should call Tanner for one of the live streams. That is an excellent idea. Maybe for the last one, we'll do that. All right, let's keep going. So we talked about like the router. We only set up one route for our app, but in navigation, but then let's talk about server functions, which is kind of the main meat about this. So you may have noticed the server function we created using create server functions. This is one of TanStack's most powerful features, allowing you to create server-side functions that can be called from both the server during server-side rendering and the client. Here's a quick overview of how server functions work. The functions are created using create server functions. They can be called from both the server using SSR, during SSR and the client, and they can be used to fetch data from the server or to perform other server-side functions. And actually, we've got a server-side function right here. So what does it do? It's basically, by creating a create server function, you're telling the framework that this is where I want server capabilities. That's what it does. So it can be called from both the server during SSR and the client, and they can be used to fetch data from the server or to perform other server-side actions. So if you want to create like a fetch call, you put it in here. I'm also using this to do other server-side things such as reading from a file itself by using create server functions. So in here, we've got a create server functions. We have a validator, which is cool that we can validate the data as it's coming in. And then we have the handler. This is where they're doing a DB query or DB search, which is a server-side function. And then it says to learn more about server functions, check out the server functions guide, which let's do it. Okay, what are server functions? Server functions allow you to specify logic that can be invoked from almost anywhere, even the client, which honestly to me that's crazy because it is a server function, but you can call it on the client as well. And I think this can be helpful because if you want to call an API, you can use a server function in your client file as well. I don't know if I'm doing that. I don't think I'm doing it. No, never mind. Okay, so in fact, they're not so different from an API route, but the cute difference is they do not have a stable public URL, but you'll have the way to do this very soon. They can be called from anywhere in your application, including loaders, hooks, components, etc., but cannot be called from API routes. However, they are similar to regular API routes in that they have access to the request context, allowing you to read headers, set cookies, and more. So super powerful that way. They can access information, sensitive information such as environment variables without exposing them to the client, which is amazing because this can be used to read like process env nodes, process.env variables. They can be used to perform any kind of server-side logic, such as fetching data from a database, sending emails, or interacting with other services. They can return any value, including primitives, JSON serializable objects, and even raw response objects. They can throw errors, including redirects and not turns. So I feel like server functions are actually kind of like the meat of TanStack Start. They help you do a lot of stuff, calling API, calling databases, accessing your like file system itself. And if I remember correctly, this is how I'm reading the file as well. So in jokes action, yeah, there you go. So in jokes action, I'm creating a file called create server function, which actually calls read jokes. And what we do in read jokes is we've provided a file on the file system called jokes.json, and we're using it. We're calling it by reading it in and then parsing it as JSON. So this is how we're reading the file. And same way, when we want to add something, when we want to add a joke, because server functions can write to a database, write to a file on the system and read from it, we're creating server functions, adding a new joke action, and then all we're doing in that is basically reading the jokes, updating the jokes, and putting that file back. So this is how when we actually submit the form, this adds a joke at the bottom of the file. We're doing that by writing to the file using a create server function. And that is kind of like the meat of this app. We are reading a file, calling a create server function, reading a file, putting that JSON, sending it over to our client side. And then we're on the client side, we render that data. But when we update the data, again, we're sending that JSON blob back to our server, create server function, server-ish. And then we are writing that file onto this computer, onto the system, using a create server function as well. So the create server function is doing all the heavy lifting in here. So that's why I think server functions are one of the most popular things about TanStack Start. Okay, I like this question. How are server functions different from React server functions? TanStack server functions are not tied to a specific front-end framework and can be used in any front-end frameworks or none at all. TanStack server functions are backed by standard HTTP requests and can be called as often as you like without suffering from serial execution bottlenecks. So tomorrow, actually in this stream, we're going to dive deep into server functions, create server function in our file, in our component, in our app. We're going to create API routes tomorrow, and we're going to take a look into how to use a create server function and what it's doing in the background. So tomorrow's stream is going to be a deep dive into server functions. So let's talk about let's go through this documentation and talk about like how do server functions work. Server functions can be defined anywhere in your application, but must be defined at the top level of a file, kind of like hooks. They can be called throughout your application, include loaders, hooks. Traditionally, this pattern is known as RPC, but due to the isomorphic nature of these functions, we refer to them as server functions. On the server bundle, functions logic is left alone. Nothing needs to be done since they're already in the correct place. On the client side, server functions will be removed. They exist only on the server. Any calls to the server function on the client will be replaced with the fetch request of the server to execute the server function and send the response back to the client. What is your favorite dev joke, Shruti? I think I might have that in here. Oh my goodness. My favorite dev joke is... I like this one. Why do front-end developers eat lunch alone? Because they don't know how to join tables. And this one, how do you declare war in JavaScript? War. I like to reframe this as I'm declaring a war. War. Serial execute bottleneck. I missed why you're using file. I understand for joke, but like replacement for DB, all joke aren't file. The reason I'm using file is because all of the jokes that I have are actually contained in a JSON in this repo, dev joke. So they're all part of like a JSON, which is right here. And then I actually just like copied a chunk of it, put it in a file, and I'm showing you how to basically just use create server functions using this file. So it's kind of like a step up tutorial. Like the first step we're going to do is read and write from a file. The second step we're going to do is write to an API, like fetch an API. And third is actually creating an API route. TanStack server functions can specify the method of the request, which is a huge win because you can specify that a server function is a GET and it can be cached by the browser or CDN. That is true. Next.js functions are forced to be run in serial Waku server functions as well, since they are using the same mechanism. I don't know if TanStack server run functions are parallel. I didn't know that Next.js server functions are forced to be run in serial. That is interesting. Okay, let's keep going through our our documentation. So we talked about server functions for now. Tomorrow we're going to dive deep into server functions, but for today, let's keep going into the rest of this. So then we've got mutations, which is how we like modify things. Server functions can also be used to perform mutations on the server. This is also done using the same create server functions, but with the additional requirement that you invalidate any data on the client that was affected by the mutation. So if you're using TanStack router, you can use router.invalidate to method to invalidate all router data and refetch it. If you're using TanStack query, you can use query client.invalidate queries. So for example, you create a server functions, you've got the validator and the handler, you db update user, and I believe that's where they're doing this. Where is this db update user? Oh. Somewhere else in your application, you've got the query client, router, and then you call updates user, use server function. And then there it is, router.invalidate. So you invalidate these queries based on this query key, users, update user, and user ID. So that's interesting. The thing is that you have to make sure that you're invalidating queries. If you're using TanStack query, you can use the query.invalidate queries thing. So I wonder why this is the case. Server functions can be used to perform mutation of the server. This is also done using the same create server functions, but with the requirement that you invalidate any data on the client that was affected by the mutation. So you kind of have to do it yourself. To learn more about the mutations, check out the mutation guide. Oh, we're almost at the end of this. Okay. Data loading. Let's talk about data loading and then we'll check out the mutations guide. Another powerful feature of TanStack router is data loading. This allows you to fetch data for SSR and preload route data before it is rendered. This is done using the loader function of a route, which we're familiar with because of TanStack router. Here's a quick overview of how data loading works. Data loading is done using the loader function. Data loaders are isomorphic, meaning they're executed both on the server and the client. For performing a server-only logic, call a server function from within the loader. Similar to TanStack query, data loaders are cached on the client and reused or even refreshed in the background when the data is stale. Okay, let's talk about mutations guide. TS server functions wrap fetch without any extra work to force them to be serial. Oh, hold on. This is about TanStack. Oh, okay. Mutations are in TanStack router guide. So let's check it out. Since TanStack router does not store cache data, its role in data mutation is to slim to none outside of reacting to potential URL side effects from external mutation. Hey, Hassan. That said, we've compiled a list of mutation-related features you might find useful and libraries that implement them. Look for and use mutation utilities that support handling and caching. Oh, there it is. Invalidating TanStack router for mutation. Okay. TanStack router comes with a short-term caching built in, so even though we're not storing any data after a route match is unwanted, there is high probability that if any mutations are made related to the data stored in the router, the current route matches data could become stale. When mutations related to loaded data are made, we can use router.invalidate to force the router to reload all of the current route matches. Invalidating all of current route match happens in the background, so existing data will continue to be served until the new data is ready, just as if we were navigating to a new route. Okay, so the idea is that because data could have been mutated on the server, you want to make sure that you invalidate any stale data and then update the data and update the data to make sure that it is not stale. So invalidating the data happens in the background, so existing data will continue to be served until the new data is ready. And if you want to wait till the invalidation until all loaders have finished, pass sync through into router invalidate. I guess that makes sense. Router.subscribe. Let's talk about this. For libraries that don't have a keying mechanism, we'll likely need to manually reset the mutation state when the user navigates away from the screen. To solve this, we use TanStack router's invalidate and subscribe method to clear mutation states when the user is no longer in need of them. The router.subscribe method is a function that subscribes a callback to various router events. The event in particular that we'll use is onResolved. Okay, a great place to reset your old mutation states. Okay, this is also where cool mutation cache. Wow, what is that? So unsubscribe function router on resolved, you basically do the same thing as invalidating. I wouldn't go with TanStack would start today, and that's because it's still in beta. That is correct. The API will be changing before the $1 release. I would recommend Astro if you want to start today. Yeah, I would plus one to what Jack said. There are some people who have made their apps on TanStack Start already, and people are seeing success with it, but it is still in beta and things can change. So go with that caveat if you have that kind of room. A quick optimization instead of reading and writing file every time use const joke equals joke. Quick optimization. I don't understand that comment, Akash. All right. So we went through this entire document, which is getting started with TanStack. We learned the basics. Basically, to recap, the three things that we do need in order to set up a TanStack start is a SSR file, which sets up the server sites, which sets up the server router as well. Then we need a router on the client side, which is similar to what we've done. I think we're pretty familiar with this. This is create router from React router. See, this is why I keep calling it React router, because it's TanStack / React router, but it's actually TanStack. It's actually like what is it called? Query, TanStack query. I keep calling it React router because of this. And then we've got client.tsx, which is the one where we hydrate our document. So we need 3 files to set up, and after that, we're good to go. That's all we need to set up. The main gist of how we do server things is through a function called create server function, which is super powerful because it can not only do front and back end things like calling databases, calling APIs, but it can also read process node as well, which is super powerful and makes it super easy for us to read and write to a file. So let's take a look at the example that we showed. Hi, Sujit. So in this app, the first thing we're doing is, if I hard refresh this, we're loading a file from our computer. It's reading from the file system. So we've got a file in here called jokes.json. Here it is. And this file has a list of jokes. The first thing we do when we load this is in our router.tsx, we're loading the main file, which is which is index dot, where is it? Index.tsx. And this is kind of where we're doing the main things. So I'm going to start off at the top. Okay, so we've got a create file route. And this is how we define what should be the path. If I added like jokes, this app would be localhost/jokes. This is how we define what the path of the app is. And then we define which function defines that route. Now this could totally go in routes.tsx as well, but I put it here. And then we define the loader for that. And this is get jokes action. We'll get into this in 1 second, but this is where we're defining like how we're going to read through the file, how we're going to read the file. We talked about create server function kind of being like this magic thing. And not magic, but like the most powerful thing of TanStack start. And that's what create server function is doing. So once we assign loader function to the router, create server function knows that I need to fetch read jokes. And it's fetching the read joke from this file in here that defines all of the actions, which is joke service. And it's going to read that from using file system and read the file. So once you've loaded a page, we've got the jokes already in here. Then we can get the jokes out of the loader, which is use loader data. So we've got the jokes in our use loader data. And now when we have our jokes, all we gotta do is render them on the page. So I've created a component here called jokes list, which takes in a list of jokes, renders it on the page. Simple. Nothing fancy here. But then when we look at the joke form, this is how we actually modify joke form. This is how we modify the file. And this is the same as like calling an API. This is the same as calling an API. So what happens here is that we've got a simple form, and actually we could replace this to use TanStack form. We're going to do that in our stream. I have a simple form here, and then on button submit, on clicking on the button, I have this handle submit function. This is like, I think this is pretty straightforward. We've all seen this, but in the handle submit function, what we do is, this is the main part here. We've got this action called add joke action, which we're using server/joke actions. And this is where we call another server function, create server function. But now the method is post. And we're getting a joke string, a question and an answer, just two things. And we put that in our database, or like we put that in our file. If you had a database, this is where that'll go to. If you had an API route, that'll go here too. So this is a super powerful function, create server function. Kind of like the meat of this. And that's it. And then we talked about invalidating data as well. So this is where we're going to invalidate data. Because I am now mutating the data that I have, I'm performing a mutation. That is why I got to invalidate the data as well. Make sure that the router has the cleanest state of data. I also want to remind everybody in the chat to follow our community guidelines and be respectful of people in the chat. Not just people in the chat, but also each other as well, including your host. Okay, and so once you've got the router invalidated, the router has the cleanest data, and then once you reload, and it'll be in a clean state, and that's all. That's all we need to do. We got two create server functions that are doing bulk of the job. Super straightforward, actually. So I'm gonna pause here and see what questions we have, and I am gonna move this to. I'm going to move this to the documentation that we were reading, which is right here. So we talked about routes, we talked about navigation, we talked about server functions, we talked about mutations, and then data loading. And that's basically the crux of this TanStack start. So what questions do you have? What can I answer? Tomorrow we're going to get into server functions and dive deep into server functions and understand how they work, what is going on in the background, because that is all like a big black box to me right now. It is super powerful, but I want to understand what it does. Okay, so for the next part of this tutorial, here's a question for you. I'm going to end this poll. All right, so 41 people took that poll. 32% have used TanStack Start, which is amazing, you guys. 34% have not, and 34% also ask what is TanStack Start. Great. So I think this is pretty timely. As an engineer, what basis you choose a tech stack like TanStack, Astro, or other? That's a great question. So depends on the functionality of the app. Honestly, I usually go for me, like I start off with basic React. I start off with, and if I can, I would start off with like just JavaScript. I want to keep the tech stack as simple as possible, and then once I add functionality, that's when I start adding more stuff. So, for example, in the previous streams that we were building a real estate agent, I started off with JavaScript, and then once I started adding more and more components, brought in React. Now I could have used Angular, but I not a big fan. Well, I guess not very comfortable with Angular. Let's put it that way. And if I need server functions at that point, or if I need server side routing at that point, usually the kind of default that everybody has is to go to Next.js. I have been getting a lot of issues with Next.js recently. I guess let me rephrase. I'm trying to avoid Next.js so that I don't have breaking changes when things update, which I've had a lot of the times when even my current website my current homepage is currently in Next.js, and anytime something updates, I have to go back and like fix all of that, and I really don't have time to do that. So I'm trying to not use Next.js as much as I can. I also trying to like explore other options besides Next.js, because that's something that I've already used before. TanStack Start is a really good refresh at that point because it is doing some of the things that Next.js is doing, but in a very unopinionated way, which is something that is very important to me. So depending on when you need server side functionality is when I would go for a framework like that. Also depends on whether you're doing more client side stuff or more server side stuff. Now, if you're doing something that is more static, then Astro is perfect for it. So actually, one of the things that I've been thinking is converting my Next.js site into a Astro site, because it is basically a static site. I'm not doing anything server in there. So actually, Next.js is not even needed in that site. So that's usually the thought process. Does server functions force page to be dynamic? I heard we should use server functions less often. More load on server. I think you could cache it as well. Oh, static server functions. There you go. Okay, let's start a new poll. And I have a new question for you guys, which is, what do you want to see next in this tutorial? Okay, here's a poll for you. What do you want to see next in this tutorial? Today we talked about the basics of TanStack Start, kind of how to set it up. What are the things you need? What are the 3 files you need to set up TanStack Start? Where do you want this tutorial to go? We also talked about reading from a file today and writing to a file today. But what is the next step you want to see in TanStack Start? Do you want to see calling an API, creating API routes, or something else? Which let me know what that is. I see that somebody has voted calling an API. What is your view on Remix? I think Remix is a really great framework. It has a lot of it takes care of a lot of things for us. I have not used Remix myself, so I can't give you first-hand experience with it. But I know that it is pretty opinionated and it does take care of a lot of stuff for you. But I haven't used it myself. And then what is the state of Remix right now? I think okay, most people are choosing calling an API. Perfect, which is what I plan to do tomorrow. I'm able to create CRUD operations as a full stack dev. How to improve my code for more complex applications. I would think about how you're going to scale that and how you're going to use a framework. I wonder how you're creating CRUD operations right now. But I would probably add a framework in there. Also depends on what you're trying to do. Next.js, okay. I think when you're thinking about improving my code for more complex code bases, I would think about scalability, and I would think about if you need to add more operations, how are you going to make sure that your app can handle it? How are you going to make sure that your server can handle it, your database can handle it? And if you're going to send a lot of data to your client side, how are you going to handle it on the client side? So if you have like a basic app set up already to make it, to ensure that it is ready for more complex data, I would think about scalability. Hey Hitesh, welcome. Feels like a lot of frameworks took place. I guess it's time to build my own. Okay, so 62% people say let's crawl an API. Cool. Get your vote in as well. If you have something else you would like me to do tomorrow, let me know. All right, I think we're gonna take a pause here. We have been talking about how to build TanStack Start applications in this stream. We're gonna build a whole tutorial together. This is a new series and it is different from the ones that we've already done. If you've joined me on the previous series, you know that we've built an AI agent, and there is a new video out on how to build an AI agent. Go ahead and watch that. I think you will really enjoy it. It's a full 43-minute tutorial on how to build an AI agent that talks about how to build an AI agent with a real estate AI agent. I'm going to show you where that is. It's right here.
This is the mutation.
And go ahead and watch that. Let me know what you think. Build an AI real estate agent. There you go. All right, folks, that was it for today. Thank you so much for joining me. I will see you tomorrow. Tomorrow, we're going to call an API like you just requested in TanStack Start. This is a TanStack Start series. We're going to build a tutorial together, and that tutorial is going to be published on TanStack Start's documentation. So bring your question and bring your curiosity and bring your learning abilities. I don't know. Bring your enthusiasm tomorrow, because we're gonna get into calling an API tomorrow. Bye. I'll see you soon.